The drama opens with Nabi, our rather innocent-hearted heroine, narrating about the choice of being in love, only to be utterly humiliated by her artist boyfriend. Moments later, an intimate moment between the two has become the subject of his latest sculpture and is on display at his exhibit for everyone to see. We don't have to know anything about Nabi at this point. We feel for her automatically, and our reaction is as visceral as hers. We see Nabi go from an eager art student in love to a young woman who's been stripped naked, literally and figuratively, for the whole world to see. It's a strong way to start a drama because it's so off-putting and quickly puts us in Nabi's camp. But even beyond the story, it's the way the story is told that makes it so effective, and that's mostly due to the filmmaking. As Nabi sees the sculpture, talks to her boyfriend, and later breaks up with him, we never get a full shot of his face. Instead, we see fragments of his facial expressions and hers in such a way that the exchanges feel incredibly intimate. After this galling moment, we back up a bit and get a better sense of our heroine. She's a student at an art school, and her work seems to be mostly in clay sculpting. The backdrop of the art school is a lot of fun, edgy, of course, and full of characters that we'll get to know more about later. For now, the main impression is that Nabi is well-liked but struggling with her classes. She dreams of studying in Paris, but she hasn't measured up yet. Her breakup has understandably flattened her spirit, but she doesn't have much time to mope. As fate would have it, she's sitting alone at a bar when a guy walks in and touches her shoulder in greeting. It's Park Jae-eon, but she doesn't know his name or anything about him. There's an immediate attraction in the air despite the initial misunderstanding, and over the course of the night, they talk, drink, flirt, throw darts, and more. But who is Park Jae-eon anyway? And why is he hitting on her so hard? He seems utterly taken with her and charmed by her innocence. But can we trust this guy? He either knows he's irresistibly swoon-worthy and uses it to his advantage, or he's genuinely drawn to Nabi, not sure which yet. Or maybe it's both. Then things get interesting. One of Nabi's friends convinces her to join him for drinks instead of pulling an all-nighter in the studio. And who is there? Jae-eon. It turns out he's also a student at their school and has been asking around about her. Nabi is halfway between swooning and ready to hide in her shell, but Jae-eon is a pro. Even in a noisy and crowded setting, Jae-eon manages to create a personal connection with Nabi. He watches her closely, noticing little details, like what snacks she wants, and silently gives them to her. Their conversation is filled with stolen glances and subtle flirtation. Despite her efforts to resist, Nabi starts feeling drawn to him. Even at a crowded table with a bunch of loud, drunk college students, he manages to create a sense of intimacy with her through meaningful glances, whispered side conversations, or wordlessly passing her the snack he saw she wanted. One can't help but liken them to a gazelle and a cheetah, already engaged in a complicated dance. As the gathering ends, Jae-eon walks Nabi home. The tension between them is undeniable. He asks her questions about herself and makes her feel special. For a moment, it seems like she might let her guard down completely. At one point, Jae-eon invites Nabi to see his pet butterflies, which he keeps in a glass container. This becomes a metaphor for their relationship. He collects butterflies, much like he seems to collect romantic interests. Nabi wonders if she is just another butterfly he enjoys playing with. Nabi and Jae-eon share an intense moment. He leans in close, making her heart race. She knows she should stay away from him. He feels dangerous, too smooth, too charming, but she also can't seem to resist. It gives them both a symbol that connects them, but also works on a metaphorical level too. Nabi is surely the same delicate creature as the real butterflies Jae-eon keeps at his apartment. One is left to wonder, does he appreciate the fragility of these creatures and want to protect them? Or does he just enjoy knowing that he can tease them and then tear them apart? Nabi faces a difficult choice. Does she allow herself to be drawn into Jae-eon's world despite all the warning signs? As she gazes at him, captivated, we are left wondering. Later on, there's a moment full of anticipation. Just as it seems their lips are about to meet, an ill-timed phone call cuts through the moment, forcing them apart before the tension reaches its peak. They part ways without a kiss, but with a heightened sense of longing, leaving both of them and the audience wondering about what could have been. With the budding romance between Nabi and Jae-eon intensifying, the drama broadens its scope by introducing more of their classmates, making the story feel fuller and more immersive. Among them is Nabi's closest friend, Bitna, an outspoken and somewhat unpredictable presence in her life. Bitna initially warns Nabi about Jae-eon, painting him as a notorious flirt who should be avoided. However, as events progress and Bitna witnesses the undeniable chemistry between the two, her stance shifts. Instead of discouraging Nabi, she playfully encourages her, adding to the confusion already swirling in Nabi's mind. Not that Nabi needs much encouragement. Despite knowing better, she finds herself constantly drawn to Jae-eon. His charm is effortless, his presence magnetic, and the way he invades her space leaves her breathless. From casual touches on her shoulder to fleeting yet intense glances, Jae-eon's approach is intoxicating. The sheer physicality of their interactions is noteworthy. This drama doesn't shy away from intimate moments, setting itself apart from traditional K-dramas, where romantic tension often lingers in stolen glances rather than physical contact. Jae-eon's ability to make Nabi feel special is both thrilling and unsettling. On one hand, he seems utterly fascinated by her, drawn to her innocence in a way that suggests genuine attraction. On the other hand, there's something calculated about his behavior, as if he knows exactly what he's doing. His gestures, brushing her lips with his fingers, holding her wrist with a gentle yet firm grip, pulling her into his space, seem too rehearsed, too practiced. This leaves both Nabi and the audience questioning his true intentions. As much as she tries to resist, Nabi is constantly pulled into Jae-eon's orbit. One moment, she convinces herself to put some distance between them, and the next, she's melting under his gaze. Her internal struggle is perfectly illustrated in a particularly steamy dream sequence, one that is rare in K-dramas. In her dream, Jae-eon shows up at her door, and what follows is an intimate, passionate encounter that feels almost too real. When she wakes up, Nabi is embarrassed by her own desires, struggling to separate fantasy from reality. That very morning, an entirely different kind of embarrassment finds Nabi in the classroom. She unexpectedly gets her period mid-class and hurriedly leaves, hoping to make it home before anyone notices. But Jae-eon, ever observant, immediately picks up on what's wrong and follows her outside. Without hesitation, he offers her his shirt to tie around her waist. It's a small but thoughtful gesture, one that momentarily softens the growing doubts about his character. For a fleeting moment, it feels like Jae-eon genuinely cares. Later that night, Nabi heads out for drinks with her friends, knowing that Jae-eon will be there. Her emotions are a mess, part excitement, part dread, as she prepares to see him again. The moment he walks into the room, the energy shifts. There's an unspoken understanding between them, a pull that neither can ignore. But just as quickly as she's drawn in, she's reminded of why she should stay away. Jae-eon isn't just charming with her, he's equally flirty with other women, leaving Nabi stuck in an emotional limbo. As the night progresses, the group plays a game of spin the bottle. When it's Jae-eon's turn, he nonchalantly kisses another girl, reinforcing the doubts in Nabi's mind. And yet, when it's her turn, she finds herself unable to resist. Despite everything she's seen, despite the voice in her head screaming at her to walk away, she leans in and kisses Jae-eon. It's a moment of reckless abandon, a decision that will undoubtedly come with consequences. With Nabi and Jae-eon close to each other, about to kiss, Nabi suddenly steps back and says she can smell alcohol on his breath. Jae-eon, in his playful manner, asks if they can continue their kissing session after he brushes his teeth. Nabi, avoiding his gaze, tells him that everyone inside is waiting for them and leaves. Later that night, Nabi's friends stay over at her place. Meanwhile, Nabi can't stop thinking about Jae-eon, which keeps her awake. After a long time of overthinking, she gets up and looks at Jae-eon, who is sleeping on the floor. Suddenly, Jae-eon wakes up and notices her staring at him. He smiles at her. The next day at a cafe, Sol, Nabi's best friend, and Bitna discuss Nabi's situation. They speculate that something is going on between Nabi and Jae-eon because they seemed very close the previous night. Sol expresses her concern, saying she doesn't think Nabi should date Jae-eon because he's not the right guy for her. Bitna, however, disagrees and says Jae-eon is at least better than Nabi's ex-boyfriend. At college, Nabi is still troubled by what happened the night before. She reads an article about kissing and relationships, which suggests that if someone kisses you, they might also want to sleep with you. This thought makes Nabi uncomfortable, and she closes her phone, trying to distract herself. Nabi hesitantly asks Sol if she thinks a guy would want to sleep with her after kissing her. Sol is surprised by the question, but answers honestly, saying it depends on the person and their feelings. Later, Nabi meets the guy she accidentally spilled coffee on earlier. She tries to compensate him for the damage, but he refuses to take the money. Instead, he suggests that she treat him to a meal. Reluctantly, Nabi agrees. During their meal, it becomes clear that the guy is starting to like Sol. After they finish eating, he tells Sol that he didn't take the money because he wanted to see her again. Meanwhile, Nabi's friends notice Sol and the guy getting closer, and they feel relieved to see Sol moving on. That night, Nabi works on her sculpture in the workshop, but keeps checking her phone, waiting for Jae-eon to contact her. When she takes a break, she sees Jae-eon working on his sculpture. She stops and watches him from a distance. Suddenly, Jae-eon gets a call from a girl and leaves to meet her. Nabi, curious, follows him. Outside the campus, Jae-eon meets a girl named Sehwa, who seems to be his long-distance girlfriend. Nabi watches them from afar and feels conflicted. She wonders why she's even spying on Jae-eon and questions her own actions. Later, at a supermarket, Nabi runs into her junior, who has a crush on her. The junior asks for her phone number, and Nabi gives it to him. Jae-eon, who happens to be nearby, notices their interaction and feels a pang of jealousy. At home, Nabi receives a message from her junior, inviting her to a college event the next day. Nabi agrees to go, partly to make Jae-eon jealous. She starts looking at the junior's photos and feels a mix of emotions. The next day, Nabi's health isn't great, and her friends tease her, saying it's because she's been spending too much time with Jae-eon. Nabi denies it, but her junior shows up and greets her warmly. Their cute interaction makes her friends curious. Later, the junior visits Nabi in the workshop, and they talk about their interests. The junior reveals that he admired Nabi's sculpture from the previous year, which she had made in memory of her ex-boyfriend. Nabi thanked him for appreciating her work. As they talk, Jae-eon walks in and sees them together. He asks what they're doing, and the junior casually mentions that he and Nabi are going to watch a romantic movie. Jae-eon becomes visibly upset and starts arguing with the junior. Nabi steps in to calm Jae-eon down and takes him outside. Outside, Nabi confronts Jae-eon, asking why he's acting this way. Jae-eon doesn't have a clear answer, and instead points out that Nabi hasn't contacted him either. Nabi tells him that she's not the kind of girl he thinks she is. Jae-eon responds by saying he won't bother her anymore. Nabi walks away, feeling frustrated. Meanwhile, the junior overhears their conversation and later asks Nabi if she still wants to go to the movie. Nabi agrees, and they go on a date. However, during the movie, Nabi sees a photo of her ex-boyfriend on her phone, which ruins her mood. She can't enjoy the movie and feels distant. After the movie, as they walk home, the junior tries to kiss Nabi, but she laughs it off. The junior gets upset, and Nabi tries to calm him down. When she gets home, Nabi deletes Jae-eon's contact number, trying to move on. Meanwhile, Nabi runs into Jae-eon at the market. She notices him from a distance, but decides to approach her junior instead. As they talk, a girl suddenly appears and grabs the junior's hand, acting like his girlfriend. Nabi is confused, and the junior later explains that the girl is his high school crush, who rejected him but recently reached out to him. Nabi doesn't respond and walks away. Jae-eon, who has been watching from afar, notices Nabi's discomfort. Later, at an event, Sol brings her office crush along, and her best friend feels left out. Nabi's health worsens. Jae-eon calls her, and Nabi answers, but her phone dies shortly after. Jae-eon, worried, rushes to her apartment. When Nabi wakes up, she finds Jae-eon by her side. He explained that he was worried about her and came to check on her. Nabi is touched by his concern, but tries to maintain her composure. Jae-eon stays with her, making her dinner and taking care of her. He even reads her a bedtime story like a child, which makes Nabi feel cared for. The next morning, Nabi wakes up to find Jae-eon still there. He checks her temperature, which has returned to normal. As they talk, Nabi asks Jae-eon why he doesn't tie his hair up. Jae-eon responds by asking if Nabi would tie it for him. Nabi agrees, and as she does, Jae-eon compliments her, saying she looks beautiful. He then kisses her, and everything stops there. We learn that she spent the night with him. Later in the morning, Jae-eon acts as if this is completely normal for him. Meanwhile, Bitna and her friends also spend their night together, and then they also regret it in the morning. At Nabi's house, Jae-eon tells her that they should take breaks from work and meet occasionally. Nabi says she will think about it. Hearing this, Jae-eon leaves. Nabi wonders if Jae-eon's suggestion means he wants to sleep with her occasionally without any commitment. At a cafe, Bitna meets her best friend, with whom she had gone on a date. The guy's name is Ji-won. Bitna tells him that what happened last night wasn't a mistake on her part, and she wants to date him. However, Ji-won feels conflicted and rejects her. This breaks Bitna's heart. At college, Sol and her best friend are not on good terms because Sol is still upset that her friend didn't share her future plans with her. On the other hand, Nabi tells Jae-eon that she doesn't want anyone to know about their relationship. Jae-eon agrees and promises not to tell anyone. They share a sweet moment and plan their next date. That evening, Jae-eon comes to Nabi's house to study and brings her a gift, a beautiful butterfly. Nabi is drawn to Jae-eon's gestures, even though she knows that like a butterfly, he can never truly belong to her. Despite this, she can't stop herself from getting closer to him. Since that day, Nabi and Jae-eon's closeness has increased, and they spend every night together. When they are alone, they act like a couple, but in public, they act like strangers. Nabi feels like her life has turned into a fairy tale, as if she has finally found her Prince Charming. The next day, Nabi and Jae-eon are sitting in the cafeteria with their friends. Nabi's friends ask her if she's dating someone. Nabi hesitates and denies it, asking why they think so. Her friend tells her that there's a different glow on her face these days. Hearing this, Nabi blushes and changes the topic. The next morning, Nabi receives a call from her aunt and learns that her birthday is coming up on Sunday. Nabi's aunt tells her to celebrate with the person she enjoys spending time with the most. Nabi thinks about it, but feels it wouldn't be right to celebrate with Jae-eon since they aren't officially dating. Their relationship is more of a no-strings-attached arrangement. After much thought, Nabi decides to celebrate with her family instead. The next day, while waiting for the bus, Nabi runs into her childhood friend, Yang Do-hyuk. They are both happy to see each other. Yang Do-hyuk is a simple and perfect gentleman. When the bus arrives, Yang Do-hyuk asks for Nabi's phone number, and she gives it to him without hesitation. As Nabi gets off the bus, it starts raining. She tries to shield herself from the rain, but notices that not a single drop falls on her. She turns around and sees Yang Do-hyuk holding an umbrella for her. He offers to walk her home, and they talk about many things along the way. Nabi is happy to reunite with her old friend, and it seems Yang Do-hyuk likes her too. The next day, Nabi goes to meet her mom. When she arrives, she sees her mom busy with her boyfriend. Nabi feels hurt and leaves without saying anything. On her way back, she reflects on how her mom has always prioritized her boyfriends over her. Since childhood, Nabi has celebrated her birthdays with her friends rather than her family. At the train station, Nabi runs into Jae-eon. They are both happy to see each other. Jae-eon makes a special breakfast for Nabi, and they celebrate her birthday together. While they are spending quality time, Jae-eon receives a call from Se-hwa. Nabi notices the name and feels a pang of jealousy. Jae-eon tells Nabi that he has some important work and needs to leave. Nabi feels the silence in her house after Jae-eon leaves. Later, Nabi meets Yang Do-hyuk, who is working at a cafe. He invites her in and makes her a special drink. Nabi is surprised that Yang Do-hyuk remembers her birthday. He tells her that he has a great memory, and they celebrate her birthday together. Thanks to Yang Do-hyuk, Nabi's birthday ends on a happy note. The next day, Nabi wears the dress Jae-eon gifted her. Jae-eon is happy to see her in it. Some classmates notice them together, and rumors spread that Nabi and Jae-eon are dating. That night, while returning home, Nabi runs into her ex-boyfriend. He tells her that he heard she's dating Jae-eon, and warns her that Jae-eon only has no-strings-attached relationships with girls. He suggests that Nabi should get back together with him instead. Nabi doesn't like his suggestion and walks away. The next day, in the workshop, Nabi overhears two guys talking about how Jae-eon is just using her and will leave her soon. This disturbs Nabi deeply. Later, the professor visits the workshop and critiques Nabi's sculpture. Before leaving, the professor advises Nabi not to pay attention to rumors, as they will only affect her work. Nabi feels like the whole world is telling her to end her relationship with Jae-eon. Later, Nabi meets Jae-eon and tells him she needs to talk about something important. Jae-eon says he doesn't have time now, but agrees to meet her in the evening. Nabi is unsure how to end things with Jae-eon. She tells him that her ex-boyfriend visited her last night. Jae-eon reacts coldly, and Nabi feels disappointed. She asks Jae-eon if he's dating someone else. After a moment of thought, Jae-eon says no. Suddenly, a man arrives and asks if Jae-eon is the one he's looking for. Jae-eon denies it, but the man pushes Nabi, causing her to get hurt. Jae-eon loses his temper and glares at the man. Jae-eon gets angry and punches the man, leading to a fight between them. Meanwhile, Sol and her best friend hear Nabi screaming and rush to help. They see Jae-eon fighting with the man and immediately call the police. At the police station, the man is let off with a warning. After leaving, the man calls Nabi and warns her not to waste her time with Jae-eon, claiming that he uses girls and doesn't commit to anyone. He reveals that Jae-eon had also betrayed his sister. Nabi is shaken but doesn't respond. Jae-eon, however, convinces Nabi to talk to him, saying he wants to remain friends. Nabi gets angry, accusing Jae-eon of wanting to maintain a friends with benefits relationship. She ends things with him and leaves, leaving Jae-eon regretful. Meanwhile, Sol and her best friend reconcile and start their friendship anew. News of Nabi and Jae-eon's fight spreads like wildfire across the college, and everyone is gossiping about them. When Nabi enters class, her classmates bombard her with questions. Nabi angrily tells them not to bring up the topic again. On the other hand, Jae-eon meets the sister of the man who attacked him. She apologizes for her brother's misunderstanding. Jae-eon tells her not to scare Nabi again and leaves. The next day, Nabi gets scolded by her teacher for not completing her art project properly. Other students also get scolded, and they promise to work harder. After class, Nabi returns home, but every corner of her house reminds her of Jae-eon. To clear her mind, she steps outside and finds a parcel at her doorstep. Inside is a necklace that had broken when the man pushed her during the fight. Jae-eon had gifted her the necklace after the incident. Nabi decides to return it and calls Jae-eon, but his number is unreachable. She plans to return it the next day. The next day, Nabi styles her hair the way Jae-eon likes it. When she goes to college, Jae-eon notices and tells her that if she doesn't want the necklace, she should throw it away. Nabi is hurt by his casual attitude and leaves without saying anything. Jae-eon goes to meet Sol, and we learn that Sol has anemia, a condition where the body struggles to produce enough red blood cells. Sol asks Jae-eon if everything is okay in his life, since he changed his phone number and seems distant. Jae-eon brushes it off, saying he's fine. Nabi meets her childhood friend, Do-hyuk, at his cafe. They talk about her art project and the food he prepares. Do-hyuk gifts her something she likes, and it's clear that Nabi is leaning on him for support. That night, Bitna proposes to her best friend, and their relationship begins. The next day, Nabi asks Sol how her hair looks, and Sol jokes that there's not much difference between their hairstyles. Nabi admits she's asking because Jae-eon likes her hair tied up. Later, Nabi is on the phone with Do-hyuk when Jae-eon shows up and touches her hair from behind. Nabi is startled and hangs up. Jae-eon asks why she's ignoring him, and Nabi denies it. They talk briefly, and Jae-eon suggests she tie her hair up because she looks prettier that way. He wishes her good luck with her presentation and leaves. During the presentation, Nabi ties her hair up the way Jae-eon likes, and he notices. After the presentation, Jae-eon and his friend joined Nabi to work on her art project in the workshop. While working, Nabi and Jae-eon grow closer. After finishing, Jae-eon gives Nabi his new phone number. Nabi notices missed calls from Do-hyuk and calls him back. Do-hyuk asks if she had to wait long, and Nabi says she called to inform him that she wouldn't be able to meet. Do-hyuk feels insecure about Nabi's closeness with Jae-eon. Meanwhile, Nabi spends the night working on her art project and impresses her teacher the next day. In class, students discuss how Jae-eon hasn't been dating anyone lately, speculating that he's serious about someone. Later, while working with Nabi, Jae-eon asks if she'd like to go to an exhibition with him next week. Nabi agrees without hesitation, noticing a change in Jae-eon. When Nabi sees the lighter in Seola's hand, she feels a bit uneasy. At that moment, she doesn't say anything to her and quickly asks Jae-eon, "Are you friends with her?" Hearing this, Seola is slightly surprised and asks Nabi how she knows about her. Nabi explains that Jae-eon often talks about her. Nabi feels a little troubled hearing this and asks Seola, "Who do you think you are to Jae-eon?" Seola calmly replies, "We've been spending a lot of time together." Nabi gets very angry but controls her emotions and tells Seola, "You should tie your hair up because Jae-eon likes it that way." After saying this, Nabi leaves, and this part starts with Nabi feeling so angry about Jae-eon's behavior that she leaves for her hometown without informing anyone. Her aunt lives there, and Nabi decides to stay with her. All of Nabi's friends, including Jae-eon, are worried about where she has gone. They try calling her, but she doesn't answer anyone's calls. Seola also notices that Nabi isn't picking up her phone but doesn't react much. She tells Jae-eon that she has broken up with her boyfriend. Jae-eon is shocked and asks her why. Seola explains that her boyfriend had a problem with her having multiple partners. Their conversation hints that they might be in a friends with benefits situation, but Jae-eon seems to be taking things more seriously now. Meanwhile, Jae-eon tries calling Nabi multiple times, but she doesn't answer. This bothers him deeply. Back in her hometown, Nabi interacts with her aunt, and we learn that she is very close to her. Her aunt also knows that Nabi has come back to her hometown. Nabi's aunt teases her about her childhood friend, Do-hyuk, suggesting that there must be something between them since they're both in the same town now. Nabi brushes it off, but her aunt keeps pushing her to talk about her relationships. Nabi's aunt advises her to be open about her relationships with her friends, but Nabi disagrees. She doesn't want to become the talk of the town. Nabi's friend, Sol, also calls her and informs her that their group is coming to her hometown for a workshop and will stay there for a week. Sol asks if Jae-eon will be coming too, but Nabi quickly denies it. Hearing this, Nabi feels relieved but also sad because Jae-eon won't be coming. Meanwhile, Sol confronts her boyfriend about lying to Nabi regarding Jae-eon not coming. Sol's boyfriend admits that he didn't think much before saying it. Nabi, on the other hand, tries to distract herself by going out. She runs into Do-hyuk, and they spend quality time together. Do-hyuk cooks for Nabi, and she compliments his skills. He jokes that he must have dated many girls to cook so well, but Do-hyuk clarifies that he has never dated anyone because he has always been in love with one girl. Nabi is surprised and asks if he's dating someone now. Do-hyuk smiles and says that Nabi was his first love. He wonders what would have happened if he had confessed to her back in school. Nabi replies that she doesn't know, but would have valued their friendship too much to risk losing it. They both smile at this. Meanwhile, Jae-eon is missing Nabi terribly. He tries calling her again, but she doesn't answer. Nabi, on the other hand, is enjoying her time with Do-hyuk. He takes care of her so well that he even sleeps outside to ensure she isn't disturbed. This shows how serious Do-hyuk is about Nabi, even though she doesn't fully realize it yet. The next day, Jae-eon tries to confuse Nabi again by sending mixed signals. He acts possessive, but also distant, leaving Nabi unsure of what he truly wants. Meanwhile, Nabi's aunt tells her that her mother named her Nabi, which means honey, because she wanted her life to be as sweet as honey. This makes Nabi thoughtful. Back in the city, Sol and her boyfriend get into an argument because Sol has been spending time with other guys, which her boyfriend doesn't like. He considers breaking up with her. Meanwhile, Jae-eon keeps waiting for Nabi's call or message, but she doesn't reach out. Nabi, missing Jae-eon, creates a sculpture inspired by him, but hides it when Do-hyuk visits her. She spends time with Do-hyuk, who shares his belief in romantic superstitions, like catching falling leaves for good luck. Nabi finds it childish, but listens to him. Nabi and Do-hyuk take photos together, and Do-hyuk compliments her beauty. It's clear that he's growing closer to her, but Nabi only sees him as a friend. Meanwhile, Jae-eon returns the lighter he borrowed from Seola and lies to Nabi, saying that Seola and Do-hyuk are dating. This upsets Nabi, but she doesn't. Jae-eon tries calling her again, but she doesn't answer. He texts her, asking where she is and what she's doing. Nabi contemplates calling Jae-eon, but receives a message from Do-hyuk instead, which she ignores. The next morning, Nabi and Do-hyuk go cycling together. While shopping for groceries, the vegetable vendor mistakes Do-hyuk and Nabi for a couple. Do-hyuk is thrilled, but Nabi doesn't correct the vendor because she gets a discount. On their way back, Nabi's bicycle tire gets punctured, so they ride together on one bicycle. Do-hyuk is happy to be so close to Nabi, but she remains oblivious to his feelings. When they reach Nabi's house, Jae-eon shows up unexpectedly. He sees Do-hyuk and Nabi together and becomes suspicious. Do-hyuk realizes something is off and stands protectively in front of Nabi. This marks the first interaction between Jae-eon and Do-hyuk, and this part ends on this tense note. Kyu-hyun gives Bitna the silent treatment while they stand together at school. He believes they've broken up, but Bitna is quick to dispel that myth. They're soon interrupted by the other kids though, including an excitable Ji-won. Meanwhile, Jae-eon makes this decision and drives up to blindside Nabi. She's of course off with Do-hyuk. However, what we didn't see last time is Jae-eon watching her from afar. He notices the pair cycling together and essentially follows them back home. Things are tense, but the rest of the kids showing up manage to cut the tension a little. Kyu-hyun sits outside with Jae-eon, while Do-hyuk shows the others around and lets them make themselves at home. Things are awkward between Do-hyuk and Jae-eon, which is only made worse when Nabi ends up in a car with them both en route to the amusement park. Jae-eon mentions her meeting with Seol A, and despite driving, continues to shoot long glances at Nabi while she's in the back seat. At the amusement park, Jae-eon continues to operate in a jealous stalker red flag zone and eyes Do-hyuk laughing and joking with Nabi over by the dojums. Next up is the Ferris wheel, with a number of different kids paired up. Among those happens to be Jae-eon and Nabi. Nabi intentionally avoids eye contact until Jae-eon outright admits that she's pretty, without breaking eye contact. He even reaches over to touch her hair, but she's very clearly uncomfortable. Elsewhere, there's a pretty cute moment between Yoon-sol and Ji-won too, with the latter scared of heights, but instantly warming once Yoon-sol offers a hand. Anyway, the Ferris wheel ride comes to an end, and the kids head back to Do-hyuk's place. Do-yeon is there and meets Jae-eon with a warm smile. Do-hyuk is not only uncomfortable about her sister, he's also clearly concerned, given Nabi's constant glances and looks over at the pair. Bitna senses this too and sits with Jae-eon, asking outright if she's jealous. She reveals that Jae-eon has a girlfriend before pointing out how charming Do-hyuk is. Anyway, Nabi shoots it down completely in front of everyone, claiming that they aren't actually romantically linked. She even takes offense to his confession about being his first love. Do-hyuk realizes that Nabi is missing, and this troubles him deeply. Concerned, he sets out to find her. Meanwhile, at the rest house, Nabi and Jae-eon are about to kiss when Do-hyuk calls, interrupting the moment. Though Nabi initially ignores the call, she is about to continue kissing Jae-eon when Jae-eon stops her, saying, "If we continue this, I won't be able to control myself." Hearing this, Nabi leaves the room. Outside the rest house, she meets Do-hyuk again. Seeing her upset, Do-hyuk offers to drop her home. Nabi refuses at first, but agrees after some insistence. From a distance, Jae-eon watches them together. On the way home, Do-hyuk stops at a beautifully decorated place where he intends to propose to Nabi. She is so surprised that she cannot hold back her tears. Do-hyuk offers her a gift as a token of his feelings, but Nabi refuses, saying, "You are a wonderful person, but this is not the right time. I am not in a position to start a relationship." As she speaks, tears stream down her face. Seeing her distress, Do-hyuk asks if she has lingering feelings for Jae-eon. Nabi honestly replies, "If I say no, it would be a lie. But right now, I need some time alone." Hearing this, Do-hyuk holds back his emotions and says, "I really like you, but I understand how you feel. You don't need to blame yourself for this." Feeling even more heartbroken, Nabi apologizes. Though Do-hyuk tries to comfort her, she walks away. Heartbroken, Do-hyuk returns to the rest house, where Jae-eon is waiting for him. Jae-eon observes Do-hyuk's sadness and asks, "You really like Nabi, don't you?" Do-hyuk responds with a bittersweet smile, confirming his feelings. Jae-eon then remarks, "You shouldn't confuse Nabi with your emotions." Hearing this, Do-hyuk becomes angry and tells Jae-eon, "Every moment I spent with her meant something to me. That's why I want to erase these memories forever." Jae-eon smirks and leaves. The next morning, as Nabi wakes up, she notices Jae-eon's car parked outside her house. Seeing the car makes her anxious, and she rushes to her aunt. There, she finds Jae-eon taking part in a pottery making session. Surprised, she asks her aunt how Jae-eon ended up there. Her aunt tells her, "He said he is your good friend and wants to learn pottery." Hearing this, Nabi becomes upset and tells her aunt, "You shouldn't let strangers into our house so easily." Her aunt is surprised and asks, "Isn't he your friend?" Nabi hesitates and avoids answering. Seeing this, her aunt reassures her. Then there's nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Jae-eon tells her aunt that he would like to continue visiting for pottery lessons. Nabi is visibly uncomfortable, but she cannot refuse because her aunt has already agreed. At the guest house, Bitna's boyfriend remains heartbroken over their breakup. However, Bitna appears unaffected, which surprises everyone. Later, as Nabi walks back home, she meets Do-hyuk at the bus stop. Before leaving, Do-hyuk hands her a handcrafted gift. Nabi smiles and says, "You always give me the best gifts." Over a call, Jae-eon tells Nabi, "I won't give up on you so easily. I'll wait until you either fall for someone else or tell me you'll never like me." Hearing this, Nabi feels conflicted. That night, Nabi waits for a call from Jae-eon, but instead, she receives a call from Do-hyuk. They talk for a while, and Do-hyuk tells her, "I'll be back soon. Would you like to meet me?" With a smile, Nabi says yes. They continue talking for a long time. The next day, when Jae-eon visits Nabi's house, she tells him, "I want to remove all traces of you from my life. I'll return everything you left here." Hearing this, Jae-eon laughs and teases her. "You haven't thrown away my things yet?" Angry, Nabi responds, "I will get rid of them soon." Jae-eon then tells her that he will come back to take his things. After finishing her work, Nabi and Jae-eon go out together. While visiting an art exhibition, Nabi recalls how her ex humiliated her in public. During their visit, Jae-eon tells Nabi, "I once saw a girl at an exhibition, and the moment I saw her, I fell in love with her." As Jae-eon describes the scene, it becomes clear he is talking about Nabi. However, Nabi doesn't believe his words and dismisses them as meaningless. The following day in art class, the assistant asks Jae-eon to model for the students. Throughout the session, Jae-eon keeps his eyes on Nabi, creating tension between them. After class, Do-hyuk surprises Nabi by bringing her delicious homemade food. She enjoys it, and they spend time together. From a distance, Jae-eon watches them with an unreadable expression before his friends call him away. Jae-eon says he will recover as soon as possible and behave properly. After lunch, Nabi shows some videos for her YouTube channel. While watching them, the two get a little closer. Then, Nabi takes Do-hyuk to see a sculpture she made in anger. Do-hyuk praises the collection and asks if someone assisted her. Nabi hesitates, but eventually responds that her friend helped her. Do-hyuk realizes that Nabi is hiding something and doesn't want to reveal that she was assisted by someone else. Even though there is no defined relationship between them, Nabi still feels something is going on. A little later, when Do-hyuk is about to leave, Nabi asks if he is going somewhere that day. Do-hyuk tells her that he will be staying at the same place where she used to work before. After Do-hyuk leaves, Nabi receives a torch, possibly symbolic recognition, from the college organization. However, she also finds out that she has not been selected for the student exchange program, and this news upsets her greatly. Meanwhile, Sol's best friend is worried because Sol has been ignoring her messages. The friend cannot tolerate this distance and thinks about talking to her. Later, Sol meets her childhood friend, who tells her that she remembers everything that happened that night. Hearing this, Sol confesses that she really likes her, but not in that way. Her best friend is taken aback and asks what she means. Sol then admits that she knows her friend doesn't like her in that way. After saying this, Sol apologizes for having feelings for her and starts leaving. However, her best friend stops her, hugs her from behind, and says, "Whatever happened must have meant something." She also adds, "At this moment, I don't know what I feel about you." Saying this, she walks away. On the other hand, someone is in the same place where Jae-eon and Nabi used to meet. At the same time, Nabi gets a call from Jae-eon, but doesn't answer it. Suddenly, Jae-eon appears behind her and asks, "What's the problem?" Nabi's face shows that she is troubled. Jae-eon asks, "Is something bothering you?" But Nabi responds, "It's nothing." As Nabi is about to say more, Do-hyuk interrupts, and Nabi stops talking midway to chat with him. Jae-eon is visibly upset, seeing that Nabi was tense before, but now she seems comfortable with Do-hyuk. Jae-eon directly asks her, "Do you like Do-hyuk?" Nabi is taken aback and asks, "Why do you want to know?" Jae-eon replies, "I was just getting a little serious." Nabi answers, "I like Do-hyuk because he is a kind and mature person." Hearing this, Jae-eon starts feeling relieved. He then asks, "What do you like about him?" Nabi lists Do-hyuk's qualities. "He's a good person, he has a pure heart, he cooks well, and I feel comfortable with him." Jae-eon, still curious, asks, "If you like him so much, why don't you date him?" Nabi responds, "If I date Do-hyuk, I'll disappoint him because I am not the kind of girl he thinks I am. Instead of listening to her entire explanation, Jae-eon suddenly asks, "Then why don't you date me?" Nabi is stunned. Meanwhile, Do-hyuk, on his friend's suggestion, goes to give Nabi a gift he forgot to give her earlier. As he reaches her house, he sees Nabi returning home late at night with Jae-eon. Jae-eon had come back to Nabi's house to collect his belongings. Nabi tells him, "Wait outside, I'll bring your things." Unfortunately, Do-hyuk sees them together. To make it less awkward, Jae-eon tells Nabi, "I should come inside to carry my things myself." Nabi doesn't refuse and lets Jae-eon inside. Do-hyuk watches everything from afar, feeling heartbroken. His eyes start welling up with tears. Inside, Jae-eon tries to kiss Nabi, but she stops him, saying, "We shouldn't repeat the same mistakes." Jae-eon, taken aback, asks, "Do you really think it was a mistake?" Nabi responds, "You know how much I like you." However, Jae-eon still doesn't understand her emotions and tells her to think carefully before making a decision. Later, when he reaches home, Jae-eon talks to his pet butterflies, saying, "I become a different person when I'm with Nabi." Nabi often checks her phone and finds messages from him, rather than sending them herself. If they could meet more often, she wouldn't feel so exhausted. Reading his messages makes her sad, and she considers calling him but hesitates. She realizes that she misses him, yet she cannot express it. On the other hand, Jae-eon feels lost and unable to focus on his work. He wonders if he should be with someone else. Reflecting on his sister's words, he starts thinking deeply. The problem is that both Nabi and Jae-eon are very close friends, and if they date but later break up, their friendship will be ruined. While talking on the school bus, Sol discusses Sunho. After hearing about their childhood memories, someone suggests that Sol should go to the place where everything started and confess her feelings. Perhaps he is experiencing the same dilemma. It is then revealed that Nabi had applied to the Image's art academy, but was not selected. A little later, the professor sees Nabi's artwork and scolds both her and another student because the professor does not like her piece. The professor, offering blunt critique, tells Nabi that she should express her emotions through her artwork. Only then can she transform a simple piece into a masterpiece. Nabi feels extremely disheartened after the professor's scolding. A bit later, she receives a call from Do-hyuk. She tells him everything that happened that day and shares that she was not selected for the art academy. Jae-eon, standing at the door, overhears this conversation and feels jealous because Nabi had told him nothing was wrong when he asked her earlier. Hearing the way Nabi talks to Do-hyuk, Jae-eon starts to believe she has moved on. Through the call, Do-hyuk cheers Nabi up and says he will be arriving soon, asking if she would like to meet him. Nabi hesitates before answering. That same evening, Sol asks her best friend, "If I didn't like you in that way, what would you do?" In response, the friend says, "I would still like you just as I do now." After listening carefully, Sol asks, "And what if I really do like you?" The friend is shocked and cannot believe her ears. She then says, "If we start dating and by any chance break up, what will happen to our friendship?" She also mentions that she does not want to remain just friends with Sol anymore. After hearing all this, Sol's friend smiles and says, "My feelings for you will never change." She hugs her and they begin a new relationship. That night, after dropping Nabi home, Jae-eon gives her a bracelet as a gift. He had made it himself, and Nabi truly likes it. Later, when an important meeting brings Jae-eon to a certain place, he unexpectedly sees Seola there. He notices her with another girl and begins to have doubts, but he doesn't confront her. Meanwhile, her friend tells her that she is leaving the country and doesn't want to meet him again because she realizes Jae-eon has truly fallen for Nabi. Sola and Jae-eon share a goodbye hug. Elsewhere, two people reunite because they cannot stay apart for long. She promises herself that she will try to change. At the airport, Seol-ah throws away the lighter, symbolizing her desire to let go of everything associated with the past. That same night, Nabi goes to meet Do-hyuk and gives him a gift, some of her best photography, which she once cherished. Nabi loves the gift. While they are talking, he tells Nabi, "That night when I came to your college, I wanted to give you a gift, but then I saw you and Jae-eon going home together." Nabi tries to explain, but Do-hyuk interrupts, saying, "Fine, if you truly like Jae, then tell me." Nabi remains silent, unsure whether she really likes Jae or if he is just a temporary distraction for her. Meanwhile, Jae-eon waits outside her house. As soon as Nabi arrives, he confronts her. "Did you understand Jae-eon's words? He was drunk when he said all that." Nabi replies, "We'll talk tomorrow when you're in a better state." Saying this, she tries to leave, but he grabs her hand and pushes her down, angrily asking, "Why did you act like you liked me when you saw me that day?" Nabi is confused as she listens. He continues, "If I tell you the truth, will you accept it? Something has already happened between us." Her mind is overwhelmed, but she firmly states, "I am telling the truth. You always said you liked honest girls." Nabi, frustrated, asks, "Is this why you asked me out on a date? Was I just an experiment for you?" Their argument escalates, and finally, Jae-eon asks, "Do you regret everything that happened between us?" Nabi responds with honesty, "Yes, and I regret that our relationship and everything else between us got ruined. But I am just as responsible for this as you are." She adds, "From the beginning, I knew my relationship with Jay wouldn't have a happy ending, but I kept lying to myself, hoping things would change. At last," she declares, "after today, I never want to see your face again." Saying this, she leaves, and upon reaching home, breaks down in tears. Outside, someone watches her and whispers that he lost Nabi. Nabi is talking to Jae-eon in the rain. He asks if she regrets their relationship, and she says yes. She adds, "You, this messed up relationship and everything we did, I regret it, but I won't blame you since I brought it upon myself." She tells him to stop showing up and ends the relationship. The next day, she tells the young person who has been helping her with the project that she will finish it on her own from now on. Nabi says she feels pathetic for recalling the warm look in Jae-eon's eyes while they argued and ended their relationship. Jae-eon shows up at the workshop and tries to hold her hands, but she lets go. On another day, Nabi arrives at the workshop and discovers that a fan has fallen from the ceiling, destroying her sculpture. She stands there in disbelief and cries by its side. Jae-eon, meanwhile, is organizing his thoughts and regrets, bringing her so much pain. He finds out the sculpture was ruined and comes by at night to offer help in fixing it. He promises to leave her alone afterward. Together, they manage to replicate and rebuild it. Jae-eon tells her she looks happiest when working, and then says goodbye, stumbling over his words, but deciding against saying more. Jae-eon starts packing his things from the workshop, as though he is leaving for good. He also asks another student to give Nabi her green notebook. After the semester ends, the others discuss finishing their projects, and mention that Jae-eon has disappeared since he finished helping Nabi. No one has seen him since. Later, Nabi meets Do-hyuk at the cafe, where he has become somewhat famous. She talks about going to see her mom after the gallery, and Do-hyuk seems a bit disappointed. The night before the exhibition, Nabi is packing some things in her closet and looks over the green notebook. She realizes that Jae-eon had actually met her before she even knew him. It turns out he saw her at the gallery where her ex humiliated her with that piece. Jae-eon wrote that he fell in love with a woman there. Remembering this, Nabi tries to call him and visits his old workshop, but he does not answer. On the day of the gallery, it's obvious Nabi is waiting for Jae-eon to show up. She receives praise from her teacher, who also suggests she should go to Paris. Do-hyuk arrives with a bouquet of flowers. While talking to him, she notices Jae-eon from a distance. She places the bouquet back in Do-hyuk's hands and runs after Jae-eon, who has already left. Do-hyuk follows her outside and tells her, "You like Jae-eon." Nabi turns him down for good and says, "Every moment I spent with you was filled with happiness, and I am sorry." He tells her not to apologize, saying, "I was able to feel those feelings because of you. There is no need to apologize." Later, at a small get-together after the gallery, the students ask Bitna and Kyu-hun who liked whom first. It turns out Kyu-hun had liked her since their first year. Bored of the lovebirds' conversation, Nabi leaves and returns to the gallery, where she sees him again. Jae-eon admits he left because he could not bear how much she hated him. Nabi tells him, "I hate you, and I know you're a jerk who toys with others' feelings, but I feel better now that I see you." He is almost in tears. He says he likes her a lot, and she asks him out. They kiss. He asks, "Won't you regret it?" And she replies that she will, but will still do it. Some time passes, and Nabi and Jae-eon appear to be happily dating. Two girls approach him, but he declines to give them his phone number, saying he has something else to do. As Nabi and Jae-eon walk by a cafe, she sees Do-hyuk, who seems to be chatting with someone and smiling. She starts to pull her hand away, but ends up holding Jae-eon's hand closer.